joined by the awesome, fantastic Cori Fader Jacobs. Yeah, thanks so much for sparing the time. I really appreciate it, and on last minute notice as well. Where I wanted to start is you play keyboards and you're an engineer, and that's obvious from your. And I just wanted to get a little bit into how you got started with that kind of stuff. I understand you're Sly Stone's cousin.
Yes.
So that's a good starting point, I guess.
That was a good starting point. I got into, I'm a piano player, so I was doing my own record and writing a whole bunch of songs. To get a good mix is very expensive. And a lot of times you send it out to a mixer and you won't get back what you asked for. So I stopped playing for a period of time to learn how to engineer and how to mix. And it took a while to get my ear to the place that it needed to be. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. So so then you end up by chance finding out meeting Sly via your relative, which is crazy.
Yeah, Novena was working at a place called the Temple Bar, and I called her to try to get bottle service for a group that was supposed to come see an artist that I was producing and MDing. The Black Eyed Peas were supposed to come through, and we were like, well, we can get them if we get them bottle service. So I'm talking to her. It's like everybody wants bottle service, especially if they're famous. And I was like, yeah, I got a famous cousin. And I was talking about Sly, and she says, yeah, well, my dad is famous. And she's talking about Sly, and I was like, well, who's your dad? He's like, Sly Stone. And she was like, and I was like, that's my cousin. And then she said, well, we're cousins, bro.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'll never forget that. Yeah, she gave me a ring, asked me if I set up studios or knew how to set up studios. Well, we got
craziness going on outside. Yeah.
I mean, like to the north of me, to the west of me, to the south of me.
Really?
They're protesting. I drove just down the street and they had Black Lives Matter signs up, and I started honking and giving the peace sign. Yeah. So she asked me if I knew how to set up a studio. I said yes, and she said, "Well, my dad needs help setting up a studio." And so I go over there, and I'm there. You know, the rest is history. I set up his studio. I got to hang out with the guy, talk to him, and one interesting story. This is how I knew that he knew. I wasn't gonna tell him, "Oh, we're cousins," because I just didn't want to be that guy.
Sure, yeah.
I'm your relative. So he started talking about his dad and his dad's running mate, cousin Kroll. Kroll is my grandfather.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. Kroll is So he goes, and Kroll had 3 kids, or he had 4 kids. He had 2 twins, and then he had Billy and he had Manuel. And he had Earlene and Merlene. And I said, Earlene is my mother.
Right.
And he was like, boy, we cousins.
Oh, that's crazy.
And he called somebody. He was like, look who's over. Everybody knows somebody in their family.
Right,
that has a person named Butch.
Right.
So he said, I guess I look like Butch.
Right,
so
okay.
The rest is history. I've been working with him ever since.
You had the opportunity to work with George Clinton via that as well then. So
work with George, because George and Sly I hung out with those two. I will never forget the day I sat in a room. I'm sitting at the desk. George Clinton is right on my left, and just on his left is Sly Stone. And I was like, this will never happen again in my life. Yeah. So I started asking questions. Who do you like? Who do you don't like? What's going on with funk? What do you think? And they were so open. The realest guys in the world. And the most important lesson that I got from them was I did a version of If You Want Me to Stay, and I played it for Sly and George. They were in the room, and a mixer. A mixing engineer was in the room, and Sly just sat there with his hands in his pocket, and he was just saying no. He was just shaking his head like this, and like all the color left my face, and I was just like, "What's wrong with it?" And George Clinton chimes in, and he says, "You play like you care too much." He's like, he said you need to play like you don't give a fuck. Just play like the fuck cares. And I was like, because I come from a jazz background where everything is supposed to be precise, almost like classical. Sure. Tried to go home and relearn it. And Sly, he told me himself, he says, you're too good. You are too good. You gotta unlearn some of this stuff and just play like somebody who just is not so into the music that everything has to be in its place. Yeah, that's not what funk is. I did a song called Old Soul with Myra Washington, a friend. She wrote the lyrics and I wrote the other half. That's on the Vegan Funk album.
Yes, great track.
Thank you. I played that for Sly, and he started smiling. And I said, "You like it?" And he said, "Yes." And that's the right tempo. And it's on my Instagram, the Cori Hypothesis. If you scroll down,
yes,
I did a short snippet with Sly, and I asked him about the Vegan Funk album, and he said that album is cool and necessary.
I mean, it's it's a really it's got such a lush. Well, obviously, it's got all these kind of P-funk and old school funk kind of nods. But it's got such a lush balance of different synthesizer sounds and everything. Each of the solos seems to be in a different tone. There's like the sine wave kind of one and the more vocodery kind of one, and there's a squelchy, kind of tweaky one, and then there's a straight kind of piano, like really nice jazzy, funky piano solo, and all the tone and timbre of everything, the balances of all the right synth sounds, it's very impressive. That must come just through just so much playing, so much different stuff.
At length. I used to go to the Northridge piano rooms, and I would eat till I was full, and I would go practice until I got hungry again. So I would just play, listen. A lot of what I do and a lot of what a lot of people have told me is that it is 95% listening. It is 95% what you are feeding yourself, and it is 5% where your dexterity, your what do you call it, muscle memory.
Sure.
And that's it's just like bodybuilding. It's not about working out. It's diet or losing weight.
Yeah.
It's not about working out. It's how you eating. Gotcha. You're eating in your body. It's the same thing with song. I don't ever want every song has to have a solo that fits the song, not the song fitting the solo. It's the solo.
Right, yeah.
I can't say that. I don't like saying the same thing, even though I use the same chord scale.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use I tailor it. I love playing out. I know what I like to do, but I like to tell the song to tell me what.
Right, yeah. Awesome. Just really listen to what the music needs. Yeah. I mean, and then obviously your second record, the Prince and the Vegan, it's a kind of experimental electronic, still very funky and jazzy and stuff, but a little more out there, and maybe a little more focused on, because obviously there's on the previous one it's like funky rhythms, whereas on this there's quite a variety of kind of different like rhythmical kind of makeups, if that makes sense, for each song. There's the very sparse stuff of the title track, but the kind of Latin feel of the closer and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So I've like how it's that you obviously between those two records, you were telling me just before we started this conversation that you have a huge backlog of songs and you're working through all these kind of
like 400 and growing. I have to write in the mornings, and with all of this, I've learned that anxiety will raise your blood pressure, because I was eating right and I checked my blood pressure and I'm like, what the hell is going on? But it's anxiety, and the anxiety is from I was pulled over for a U-turn not far from my house,
right?
And then they wound up arresting me and taking me to jail, towing my car, and then assaulting me. I was handcuffed, and the officer elbowed me into the back of the police car. He was about 300 pounds. And I was at that time fearing for my life. No criminal record, nothing more than a parking ticket.
Yeah.
So after going through that, every time I saw a cop, there was PTSD. So all that anxiety. But I've learned that if I'm playing and just letting my fingers go and just there's a release.
Relaxes you, yeah, because you get into your zone, I guess.
You get, man, and the zone it's a beautiful place to be. You know, when I'm taking a solo, I take a deep breath, I relax, and then I just listen to what's going on, the bass, the drums, the guitar, and then I try to add that. And that's what I'm teaching on the lessons. Is
I was going to say, obviously you're doing these amazing lessons. So you've got these great deals at the moment for like $1 lesson, which, I mean, you get to learn from someone like when they go and listen to your albums, if they don't already know, mini albums. What do you call them? EPs?
They're EPs, like 3 to 5 tunes.
Yeah, they're like 20, 25 minutes. Tons of music packed in there, tons of quality, such great arrangements. So they're genuinely getting like some real gold out of you, because you're teaching the stuff that you can't really get on another YouTube tutorial, because it's the stuff that you've had to kind of find out in between the gaps. Do you want to talk a little about that?
Yeah, a lot of times you'll hear keyboard players play some things, but you'll never hear anybody teaching them. Most of the people who teach are good teachers, but they're not great players. They can play. Some of them are really good players. Like there's one guy on YouTube who plays this synth-based stuff. His fingers are flailing. He's killing it, but he's not teaching it. And he's the pitch bend, and I'm like, wow. Or the Latin cat who plays all of these fiery licks, or that girl on Instagram, they're flying, but they're not teaching. Yeah. What I want to do is teach the beginner. Basically, it'll take them a while to get to where they're flaring and flying.
Of course.
What I want to teach is the philosophy of a solo. How a solo is akin to like starting a fight. First, you start pushing each other around, and then you start throwing blows. And then at the end of the fight, it slows down. You either looming over the person and you watch them leave. You know what I mean?
Or they're both in a pile on the floor.
Same with solo.
Yes. So then and just to like establish a couple of your credentials for said lessons, not that we really need to do that. You played for some pretty amazing people. Obviously, you played on. I thought I didn't know any Pussycat Dolls songs apart from Don't Ya, and then I went in research for this. Listen, Stick With You. It's really famous. It's one of the most famous songs ever. It was playing like everywhere for ages. And so you played a bit on that.
Yeah, keyboard player had either canceled, and so the producer called me in and asked me to embellish what I guess he had done, or someone else had played it. So rather than do what they did, I just basically spread out what was done and reharmonized it, and it worked. And my name is right next to Ron Fair's name on that record. Right. And I was happy. I didn't know who the Pussycat Dolls were either. I was like, who's this for? They were like the Pussycat Dolls, and I was like, who's that? I didn't know. And then when the song went #1 on iTunes, #1, and it was just, I was like, what? And then it got nominated for a Grammy.
That's insane, isn't it?
Wow.
I
was like, wow, okay, this is cool.
Yeah, and speaking of that big Grammy size kind of stuff, obviously Beyonce, you did a remake of the Des'ree Kissing You song that was then not re-included on the reissue of her album.
Yeah, the Des'ree version was on the Romeo and Juliet soundtrack.
That's right, yeah.
And we did, a friend called me over and and I was like, where did you get a Beyonce a cappella? We did 2 versions. We did the version that completely mimicked Desiree's version, just the music.
Yeah.
We did a version that we put together. Shout out to DeConzo Smith, Grave Room Music, a beast of a producer. And he's worked with everybody. Everybody. He even did he did a song. I'm trying to remember if he did a song. They sent it to Prince, and Prince approved it, and it was supposed to be on the Men in Black soundtrack. I think it was for Nexum. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I've learned, I learned from him. So he's my mentor. It's like, and he was like, I'll show you everything I know. Just a beautiful. There are some beautiful people in this industry alongside the sharks.
Sure, of course. It's all about navigating those waters, really, isn't it?
You gotta love swimming. You gotta love to swim.
Because you seem to have like swimmed in some with some pretty big fish. I mean, Bobby Womack, like that's a pretty crazy thing. Obviously, that was with Sly again. Is that
Sly had called, or Bobby had called Sly and asked him about me, and Sly said, "That's my cousin. He can play his ass off." And he said he better play good or I'll beat his ass.
And well, you don't want to get your ass beaten by Bobby Womack, do you?
No, you don't. Bobby Womack, man, we did a boat cruise and I got to but I got to see Bobby Blue Bland before he transitioned.
Wow.
I also got to see Charlie Musselwhite and all. It was a blues cruise.
Right.
Got to see some. Bobby Blue Bland is a legend in the blues.
Right. Yeah.
Bobby Womack, I learned a lot from him. I'll never forget. We were we were just about to go on the world tour, and we were playing the Shrine Auditorium. He comes over to me and shakes my hand. He says, "I owe you an apology." And I was like, "What do you want an apology for?" He says, "Because I've been riding you this whole time." Because what happened was there was another keyboard player and he was messing up. Bobby was blaming me. Bobby was like, and the guy wasn't saying anything. So one day the guy messes up. Bobby looks at me and I just get up and I scream at the other keyboard player. I was like, "What the fuck is your problem, bro? You keep fucking up and he's blaming me and you're not saying shit." I was upset because I was about to start a gig and no one else said anything. Finally, that's what Bobby was apologizing for. So I wound up going on that tour, and I met C.J. Emmons on that tour. C.J. Emmons is singing with Dancing with the Stars. And
cool.
Yeah, phenomenal beast of a singer. Beast of it. And I met Rusty. Rusty played bass for Sly on the Fresh album. Woody Alford, guitar player, he's a beast. I did Lauryn Hill with him. I did a session with George Clinton and Sly, and Sly asked me to do the track that George Clinton was going to sing over, and it was Flashlight. I was like, "You want me to redo Flashlight in front of the guy who did it original?" I was
no pressure.
Wow. So I walked down and I see George Clinton in the studio. He's got his headphones on. He's listening to music. By the way, this guy listens to a myriad of different kinds of music. He played me a lot of stuff I'd never heard before. So I said, "Hey, Sly wants me to redo the track. And if you're cool, we can work on it." So I didn't want him to hear me not remembering how to play Flashlight. All I knew was the bass line. I put headphones on, did the track, played it for him when I was done, and George says, "Yeah, I can work with that." I was like, "Woo, let's go." So for the next 3 hours, George he's not a musician, but his ears are huge. He was telling me when I was on, when I was off, give me another track, and that was phenomenal. So when we're done, we're playing the track out in the room. In walks Sly Stone. He's just smiling, and that's it. Walks over to me and he says, "Give me a keyboard." And I'm like, "Okay," because if you didn't like it, you wouldn't. My head is like this, and I'm just like, Same with Lauryn Hill. She was like, we were in the studio. She's like, "I want this done. Redo this. Redo these vocals. Redo that drum track, and I'll be back in 2 hours." She comes back in the room. And I start playing the track. She walks out of the room, and we are like, devastated. She doesn't like it. But then she walks back in with her guitar and starts playing to the track, and then that's when we know we did good.
That's crazy. I mean, you do quite a lot of stuff through syncing, obviously, in terms of like, because obviously we were talking a bit earlier about being, you're you're a working musician. Obviously now at the moment we've got these crazy times where you can't be out playing. You've got albums out that you can't go out and promote, etc. So it's key really to kind of keep your myriad of potential earning streams open. And so we were talking a little about syncing, and you were saying that part of it is getting the editor's music and kind of.
If you know an editor, when I did the Allen Iverson documentary, I worked with Steve Perry, who was the editor. The producer was Zatella Beatty. It was a female producer producing a basketball documentary. She did a phenomenal job. He is an A-list editor. We worked on Spider-Man, worked on Book of Eli, and it does music in his own right. I learned a lot from him. So he told me editors like to edit to music, but composers like to compose to the shot. So it's
chicken egg.
Thank you. How do you handle that? So what you do is you just give them music with a lot of turns, a lot of sharp hits, so they can edit bop 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 bop, bop and then groove and then bop 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 bop, that type of thing. If you can get that to the editors, when the editors are working on something, they use their favorite music as temp music to put it in. Usually the temp music makes it to the film because the editor edited it around the temp music. So the temp is the source. So
especially if they're not using Led Zeppelin's track that they're going to have to get then clearance for. Do you know what I mean? So you're kind of putting yourself one step ahead of the whole game, really, by doing that, which is an invaluable tool. So thanks very much. So on your website, you do an awful lot of stuff. You do mixing, you do production, you do writing, you do obviously the keyboard lessons at the moment. You keep pretty busy. What have you got like coming up, and is there like kind of exciting stuff that you've got around the corner?
I got another record that I'm working on that I'm putting together. I'm also working on a film, a Netflix documentary about the life of Marvin Gaye through Dorian Holley, who's an amazing vocalist. He sang with everybody. That got put on hold because of COVID. Working with a phenomenal director, producer in Mr. Fennessy, D'Artagnan Fennessy. Remember that name?
Okay, yeah, it's quite a distinctive name.
Yeah, very good director, producer, and he's got great ideas. So I'm working with him on that, and I'm a music supervisor and composer. So
brilliant.
That's in the right, and I plan on continuing the teaching because I'm finding a lot of fulfillment, and I'm finding a lot of I'm relearning some of the things that I may have forgotten.
Right, sure. Yeah, it's always good to refresh for yourself, isn't it? After how many years have you now been playing in the industry?
Oh my goodness.
Decades.
Wow. Yeah.
So then so there's stuff that you'll be revisiting, which will actually be the first time you might have kind of heard that since almost like when you started, in a strange way. So you're kind of boosting you're rebooting your own brain in a sense.
You never stop learning. You're always learning. And some of my students, I give online lessons as well. Some of my students are teaching me a lot, and I'm showing them a lot of things that they're like, whoa. One of my students was like, I'm amazed at how fast you can play. But I never really thought about
that being a point.
You don't play that fast? Like I'm thinking, I have to remind myself they're not there yet. So I'm showing them these finger exercises that they can do to when they're not playing. You have to play all the time. Jimi Hendrix always had a guitar in his hand.
Yeah.
Everywhere he went, he was playing guitar. You have to become asphyxiated and a lunatic about playing if you want to be at a high level.
That dexterous and that versatile, and also the processing of information, because obviously that's like, especially if you want to play session or whatever, then they're looking for how fast you can pick it up, essentially, right?
And if you're playing a session, they want creativity. They want you to be something not that you've learned in school, but something that is not, they want something new and edgy.
Bring the different flavor, yeah.
Right. And that otherwise, because there's a lot of keyboard players who can play what they've been taught, and they're very good at playing what they, playing that stuff. But when you go into a session, they want your timing to be straight. They don't want to have to quantize.
Sure.
And they want your feel, and they want your ideas. And I've been in sessions where they will siphon you for ideas. Oh man, that was great. Let's do another. Oh man, that was great. Let's do another. And then I've learned to just be like, no, let's just see what this is gonna do.
Right. Yeah. But and so do you feel? I mean, obviously, you've done like all of these different types of work. Do you think that there's something that stood you in good stead through doing all of these different kind of multiple different jobs? I mean, obviously, you have to keep your things quite broad to keep work going. But what do you think helps you do that?
A hunger.
Right.
When you got to eat and you got bills to pay. You're just like, oh, I can do this. I don't do anything I don't enjoy.
Right.
If I'm not happy with it, or I enjoy mixing. I used to hate it because I couldn't do it.
Right.
And now I love it.
Right.
Teaching, I was like, I'm impatient, but I've learned how to make a video. This is what I want you to play. Now play. Now go play.
Right. Yeah.
So I can do it one time and send them a video, or I could teach somebody online.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that. I enjoy writing, I think, is my biggest point. I love writing. I love, the best song is always the next song.
Right.
And the clean
that's true.
thing,
That's true. Yeah.
It has to be, because
It keeps you excited, I guess, isn't it?
It keeps you like, oh, I could try to beat that. Michael Jackson used to say, we got good songs, but now we got to try to beat them. I ran
of course, yeah.
I ran into Jonathan Moffat, and he was working. He was standing next to his engineer, Michael's engineer.
Right.
And his engineer said, yeah, Michael's got some songs, but he wants to beat them. And I'm like, whoa. I mean, where's the mentality?
Yeah. Well, that's the winner. That's why Michael's Michael, I guess, because he was always just trying to beat the best that could even be thought of, let alone done. You know, if he's got a song in his imagination that he wants to beat that no one's even managed to make yet. Do you know what I mean? So you've had some run-ins with Stevie Wonder as well, with not run-ins in a bad way, but good ones. Yeah.
Rob Arbitier, who's an amazing engineer, great studio, and his engineer and partner is Gary Ozobal, who is a renowned engineer.
Yes.
Rob was telling me this Prince story where Stevie was there. I think he was working on one of Stevie Wonder's album. Stevie Wonder, Rob and Stevie sent Prince the track that they were working on for Stevie's album. Prince sent it back the next day, took all Stevie's music off and put all new music on, and Rob played me Stevie's
the original. Yeah,
which was good. I was like, oh, well, that's
amazing.
good. I want
Yeah,
Prince
sure,
that. And then he played me Prince's version, and I was just like, whoa. And then not to cut Stevie's, Stevie's a beast. He's really good.
Yeah, of course.
What Prince did was just like, I was like, this dude is ahead of his time and stuff. And I don't think that version will ever be released because it was so good that it beat it beat the whole album.
Nowadays, who knows what will come out nowadays? We can only hope, can't we? Right. So it's actually around. So it's around his. This show's going to be coming out around what would have been Prince's birthday. And when you were warming up earlier, you played a little something. I didn't know whether you wanted to quickly just give us a little bit of that.
Oh yeah.
And maybe the audience can guess what it is.
Maybe the audience can guess what it is. Let me.
If they've learned their ABCs, I guess, or something.
If you're a real Prince fan, you know this.
You should already know what it is. Yeah.
Right. Just by that.
Yeah. Sorry, we still set up. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Happy birthday, Prince.
Happy birthday, man. That boy right there.
Yeah. So yeah, well that's absolutely, yeah, thanks so much for that. So not only Steve Wonder, but also you met James Brown once and he played your keyboards. So tell me that story, because
I was at a Grammy party. It was a
which
Grammy
is pretty
show.
Cool in itself, anyway.
Well, yeah,
just
yeah.
Throw that in. Just throw that in. Just at a Grammy party, like you do, you know.
So we were we were the band at the party, and we were backing up Tina Marie, James Brown, yes. And well, those two I know, because I mean, even though they both transitioned. Yeah. So in walks, I'm setting up, and the bass player, who also plays guitar, says, "Hey Cori, look at the front door." And I look up, and this big, huge, this guy had to be 600 pounds, with a big trench coat, walks in. Behind him is James Brown. And I'm like, whoa, I've never seen James Brown before. So James Brown is at the edge of the stage, and I'm setting up, and I'm messing with these horns from this little module. And James goes, "Hey, those don't sound like horns." But I mean, I was embarrassed.
He didn't dock you $5, luckily.
But he was listening to me play. He walks on stage and he goes, "James," and I was like, "I know who you are." And he's like, "You sound good." And he comes over and he starts playing my keyboards, and I'm looking at him like, this is the Godfather of funk. This is the hardest work.
You haven't cleaned them ever since, right? You just left them. They still got his finger.
I wish there was a way to
preserve it. Yeah. Dust it. You needed to dust them for Prince.
I should have done that, but I was so blown away. The only way I could prove I met him is he gave me his card. He gave me his card. He told the big guy, said, "Give him a card. I never know when I need a keyboard player." And I was, oh man, that blew me away. I was just like, oh my God, I just met James Brown.
Yeah. And what's more, he even put it into the frame of possibility that you could play for him at some point, which is good enough. From the guy who literally, like docks people like it's not, that's pretty cool, isn't it? So
I would have done it and got docked. Some gigs you would pay to do.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Prince is one of those, isn't it? Where he'd be like, yeah, I'll give you 50 quid a day.
Because playing with Prince is not only playing with Prince, but it's a lesson.
Yeah.
It's a school, like working with Sly.
That's what you were saying, about the vocals. Obviously, recording the vocals for this I'm Back album, you're like,
man, that album came out through Cleopatra Records. and I engineered all the vocals. Basically, he sang 3 separate takes of each song.
And these are like Sly hits. So
yeah,
you're
all the hits. If you want me
just
to
in a room, hearing him re-sing like some of the archetypal funk legendary classics of all time, which must be quite a rush.
It was unbelievable. Any other situation, if someone else was singing it, that means you're recording covers. Sure. But if you're recording the person who sang it, it's not a cover. No, it's like I am recording the original. I was like beside myself.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Like this dude, you know.
And all the tips. I mean, you must just pick up things about funk just by standing around the dude. Do you know what I mean?
Man, there's a story. He called me over. He wanted to redo Que Sera Sera.
Oh wow.
And so I'm sitting there with him, and I was like, I don't remember the song. Can you please play it for me? And then I'll play it after you. So he plays it, and I'm like, okay, cool. Just play it one more time, and then I got it. He plays it again, all different chords.
There you were thinking you'd know it more after the second time.
changed up on me, but that coincides with George Clinton once telling me after I played Sly I did a remake of If You Want Me to Stay, and Sly did not like it, but George said you play like you care too much. You need to play, you play like you don't give a fuck. And Sly didn't give a fuck. All right, I'll play it again. Just threw hands up there.
Right, yeah. I think that's something that comes with like more age and experience and time served and everything, is the confidence to kind of not care, like to know that you're solid enough in what you're doing to throw your caution to the wind, if you know what I mean.
You can do that. The one thing about Sly I don't think a lot of people know is that he knows his theory. He went to school, Solano Community College. He studied under a guy named David Froelich. And I remember at one rehearsal with Sly, he was like, Cori, everything you're playing is a minor third off. Move everything up a minor third. And I'm looking at him like, wait, what? So I moved up a minor third, and guess what?
It was right.
Like, he wasn't even playing the keyboard. He was just listening. He was just listening. And I was just like, whoa. So that's why on my website, Learning How to Read 101 is free, because everybody needs to be able to explain to somebody what they're doing wrong, or what you just can't say, I don't like what you're playing, get out of here. Because all you're doing is shading the fact that you can't explain how to, if the person can play, just show them how to play it right.
Yeah, for sure. Amazing. I mean, well, I'll probably go off and start studying that as soon as I finish with speaking with you, being honest. So I could.
I mean, George Clinton doesn't know theory, but his ear is so huge.
Yeah.
I don't think he needs it. You know what I mean?
He's just been
studying.
Yeah, he's no newbie to this game, is he? And he's like the guy who removes like a whole band on Maggot Brain, and it makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like there's like he's a bold, he makes some pretty bold decisions, and and gets away with it like all the time. So you're actually doing some tracks on the next George Clinton project, right?
Well, I've sent them some songs, and I'm waiting to hear back and then see what they do.
And that's as a follow-up to the track that you did in 2018 on You Have It.
Frog Dog. Medicaid Frog Dog is the one I have. The song is called You Have It. And I did, Tracy Clinton, his son, sang on Prince and the Vegan. He sang on If I May Let You Go.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That guy it's a very dark song, but it works. Like if you listen between his timbre and the way he layered his vocals, it is amazing.
Yeah. It's a real standout track. It's experimental, but really enticing at the same time. It's not like in a kind of put off way. It's like the kind of experimental that really draws you in. I think it's something to do with the sparseness, and then it's kind of got this unique kind of rhythm and sound and timbre to all the instruments that are floating in and out. It's just got a very, very interesting, like almost that parade kind of feel, you know, like that kind of era of Prince where he's quite stripped back, but using real instruments, and jazz had started to really inform his kind of thing. So yeah.
Prince's best jazz album, I think, was Rainbow Children. That whole album.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing, really, isn't it? Like John Blackwell, the drums on that is crazy.
Yeah.
You were saying about Sly and how obviously he's like, you know, doing great and everything. So that's
amazing.
That's really nice to hear. So yeah, hopefully you should entice him back into the studio and, you know, see if you can get some new Sly going. That would be
he's over the years since I've been working with him, writing all the time. Whenever I go, because I tech his computers. Yeah. Whenever I go over there, the desktop is full of just tracks, and I would highlight those tracks, put them in the folder, and then the desktop would refill up with other tracks. And I would do this like 9 or 10 times before the desktop is full. That's how much he's writing.
Wow.
And his stuff, I will never forget him calling me and saying, "Come over. I think I'm finally the man that you think I am." So I go over there and I sit down. He hits the space bar and then leans back in his chair with his arm hanging down with a smile on his face. And I'm hearing the funkiest stuff, simple funky, that I have heard in a long, not a lot of stuff going on, just basically the bass, the drums, and maybe the melody and some comping in between. And it's just making my head, it's forcing my head to nod. I can't, like, what the hell?
Irresistible funk meets immovable keyboardist.
He is the inventor of it. James Brown came out on the East Coast with his funk.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? On the West Coast, Sly started doing it, but it wasn't.
Totally.
It wasn't like the East Coast. It was Sly was doing his own thing.
Yeah, just so huge pioneering in that way as well. Like in terms of, you know, just the multicultural side, we could go on about Sly forever. It's just great news. I'm conscious of keeping you for super long, so I just wanted to so basically we've got a new record coming from you. You've got all these lessons that people should definitely take advantage of whilst they're bored indoors and you're bored indoors. This is the time. And then you'll be up and playing, hopefully, as soon as there's a chance to promote your own music.
I'm booked to do the Long Beach Jazz Festival. Well, we'll see what happens. I think that's around October. I think.
Right. Okay, that's hopeful.
It is hopeful, but we'll see. You know, fingers crossed.
Depends on second waves and things like that. Yeah. Exactly.
So right now the lessons, you can't beat $1 to get a course.
Absolutely. Like, just puts it in the hands of people who usually might not be able to as well, which I think is really cool. So well done. Yeah. It's important to have a little bit of a community vibe in your makeup, isn't it? Like, pass it all around, if you know what I mean. I've got to let you get going. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for spending the time, and good luck for the future. And good luck with being in America. And
thank you. That's the thing.
And hopefully we'll reconvene at some point in the future. But yeah, good luck with all of your vegan funk, Prince and the Vegan, and the third coming installment. We'll look forward to it. And everybody, go and get a lesson. Yes, sorry, what were you going to say?
Don't forget about, if you go under Cori Jacobs, CoriJacobs, yes. There are, I think, 2 or 3 one full album with 15 tracks, and it's mostly kind of jazzy. And then there's an album called Freckles, and then there's another album called Other Highs. And those albums... Okay. They're funk based, and then there's a cover of Bolero, Maurice Ravel's Bolero that I did.
Oh, wicked, awesome.
So then I switched to Cori Hypothesis, and now
right, sure. And the rest is history.
Yeah, yes, yes.
Awesome.